he's got Kerry Farr in his corner. Kerry Farr knows the boxing game.
Well, hello, friends. I'm Kerry Farr, and my good friend, the master movie maker, Kyle Saylors, is joining us tonight. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me on In Your Corner Live.
How's it going, Kerry? It's good to see you, man. I like your intro, man. Kerry Farr's in the corner.
Oh, hey, Kyle, you know, when you started out as a young man, you were so shy that when you went to college, you didn't have many friends. Tell us what you did to become the most popular guy in school.
So I'll go back to first the fast version is when I was a kid, I was petrifyingly shy. In fact, most people did not know I existed. And I remember in junior high, I would come in after class and people would be sitting around talking, and I would just sit in the middle of the room and no one would ever even, as if I didn't even exist, you know? And so I listened to people and I realized that people aren't really, you know, the rock and roll or, you know, the rebel guys and the jocks and the this and this. And when you listen to when you take away the labels and you just listen, you realize there's people aren't really that far different, you know, and we live in a society that tries to tell us, oh, everybody's so different and we're so divided and blah, blah, blah. But really people want the same thing. And so that was in my brain, but I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to tell a story. I didn't know how to talk. So through most of the, finally I had a few friends at youth group, one or a couple of friends in high school, and that's about it my whole life. Like I had them on my hand, I could count, you know? And so I went to college and I was like, these people don't know I'm a nerd and they don't know I'm shy. So I was like, I read this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And so I was like, all right, I want to change my haircut. I'm going to take off my glasses and get contacts. I'm going to, you know, I'd been working out. I just, you know, I did everything that I could do to like mentally change who I was. And I was like, but these people don't know any different. So I went in, and the first week, this one story, I was sitting there and there was one swing. I noticed when I first showed up to school, there was 2 swing sets out front of the dorm room. This is only a school of 600 people.
And this is Bible College in Waxahachie, right?
Waxahachie, little private school, about 600 people, about 400 on campus, I think. And so mainly the people on, you know, at that point, I did not like I was counting or keeping up, but so I went around and I sit down and I was like, okay, if there's one spot on this swing set, there's 4 seats. So if there's one person or if there's 3 people or 2, I'm going to sit down, ask a couple of questions, and I'm going to get out of there. So I don't have to actually even talk to anybody. I just sit down. So I'd say, hey, how's it going? Where are you from? You know, what are you here? Oh, cool. Okay. Hey, I got to go. Bye. And that was it. And then I went at nighttime. And every time I walked in and out between class, here, there, and I would write down everybody's name and anything they said in that moment, I would write it down. And so at nighttime, I would try to memorize it. And so the next day when I walked across campus, I would be like, hey, Susie, or hey, John, or hey, whatever, you know, and suddenly they're like, oh, wow, you're the first person to remember my name. And within a week, I had memorized 200 people by their first name, which is half the campus. And so when I walked into the cafeteria, 50% of everybody in that whole room knew me. And if they didn't know me, they were like, why does everybody know this guy? And nobody knew anything about me. Nobody even knew what I did, where I was from. Nobody. I just literally, and then I realized after that, I was never shy again. It cracked off an entire lifetime of shyness in a week. And now people just try to make me shut up, you know.
Hey, but you know, I do notice that you're sitting in front of Johnny Cash's One Piece at a Time Cadillac, and so you're out at you know, Brian and Sally Oxley's Hideaway Farm, which was formerly owned by Johnny Cash. Tell us a little bit about that before we start saying hello to some of the people that are joining us tonight.
Yeah, so this car is made out of 26 Cadillacs, and so his hit song back in the day, they put all these Cadillacs together, and so somebody actually made the car, and they called Johnny Cash and said, hey, if you'll come do a charity event, I made the car. If you'll do a charity event for us, I'll give it to you. And he did, and they ended up becoming best friends many years through the end of their life. But so our office is out here. So we used to live in L.A. and we lived in the concrete jungle. And in fact, when we got to Nashville, at one point we had an office downtown by where the JW Marriott is now in that building. And but it was just traffic, and it was just like, what are we doing? So we left. When we left LA, we went as far away as we could, which is Monarch was pretty far. And so we ended up here, and so we do all our post production here on our films and stuff and our meetings. And so anyway, this is a wonderful place that they rescued really from, after Johnny died, it kind of went into it burned, and then so they really came in, Brian and Sally, and infrastructured it and built it out. And then I ended up there from doing a party one time, and it was the party of all parties, I guess you'd say, here, and it built a rapport, and we ended up doing tons of stuff and music festivals and this and that all through the years, and they're our dearest friends. So
Yeah, I think I was there one night when you had probably 1,000 people there.
yeah. So, and that's through my making lots of friends, and to this day, I've continued to make so many friends. I don't know what to do with them.
You know what to do. Let me say hello to a couple people, and then we'll come back and ask you some questions. John Sussman joined us from Kentucky. Kelso, the sheriff,
Also,
horse whisperer Kelso Butcher is with us. Lorraine Stevenson joined us. John Mark Grob, that Walt Disney cartoonist. I say Walt Disney because he probably is better than Walt Disney was back in the day. John Mark. Corey Folks is with us. Marcus Ellis joined us from Kentucky. Nancy Brown says hello. John Collins, a former champion boxer, is joining us from West Tennessee. And one of our best friends, Mr. Rob Blair, is joining us, Kyle.
Robert the Blair.
And Ruth Brown just jumped on, and Ruth was at the house a little earlier today. Hello, Ruth. And so, Kyle, take us back. Douglas Akers is joining us from West Kentucky. Take us back to the filmmaking days, but maybe before you do that, tell us a story about Kenny going to the movie when he was a teenager and what happened. What happened?
Oh, you probably should save that for Kenny's, but you save that for Kenny's. But I'll tell you about I got a funny one that relates to that. We were not allowed to go to the movies when we were kids, and so we thought it was like, so, and basically, I mean, most of what we watched was Andy Griffith and Lucille Ball. I'm not for sure if we knew television still had color, but I remember one time we really loved Arnold. We went to our cousin's house, Brent down, and he let us watch it. It was like Star Wars, and then we ended up watching Indiana Jones or one of those movies, and we loved like it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and we loved that stuff. But then my mom wouldn't let us, watch anything because there's violence in it. So what I did is I went and took the Bible, and I went through the whole Bible. I mean, this is before they had AI to just say, hey, write all this down. I went through the whole Bible, and I wrote down a notepad, and every violent thing every person that died, every murder, I documented it, and I had this whole notepad, and it filled the whole thing. And I went to my mom and I was like, look, Mother, the Bible is full of violence, and why does it matter if somebody she had a I guess a dilemma, a dilemma. She's like, well, I guess it's okay to have violence, but you can't have any of that other stuff, And so we would go rent from our video store, rent a VHS tape, and we got a VHS camera, and we would record it. And I would go through late at night, and I would hit play, and then we would watch it, and then we'd mark down where the bad stuff is, and then we'd go through and edit it out. So we had our version that we could watch.
So your mom will let you watch it. Hey, let me say hello to a few more people. My wife, Latrell Farr, is joining. Karen Audrey Edge from Myrtle Beach is joining. DeLacy Belafont's down there suffering in Florida this week. She says hello. Mark Bittner, hello from Florida as well. And we've got some people here that must be your friends. Anselmo Germano and Stuart Bishop says a great story from Kyle is about his work with Satan. And he says, hi from Waverly, Tennessee. I didn't know that Stuart lived that close to me. All right, Kyle, I was with you at SatanCon a couple of years ago, so I don't know if that's a story you're going to tell, but go ahead and tell it.
Yes, we're at the tail end of this project. It's one of these. There's two types of projects. One that documentaries that you can go and shoot, like when we went to the Dominican Republic, almost like a TV special. We shoot for a week, we edit for a week, and boom, it's all, you know. But this was one that kind of came over time, and it kind of really wasn't a project, and it became one. But we ended up, it was about, there's a great fascination in America with horror movies and with exorcism in general. And so that was kind of the general premise. And so we thought, well, we want to talk to a Catholic exorcist, a Protestant exorcist, people who don't believe in it. And then we want the total opposite. We're like, what's as far opposite as we can get? And we're like, well, probably Satanists, you know, like, what do they think about this? So it was just like, surely. And so we put in credential requests to see if we could access what was termed as the largest satanic gathering in America. And much to our surprise, they said, sure, come on down. And so, and you came with us, and then we had an interesting 3 days, and we learned a lot, and met a lot of people. Yeah. And so anyway, that was so soon that will be somewhere. Hopefully by October. Our goal is by Halloween that'll be out. But one of our many misadventures and adventures, and you know, you never know where things take you and the people you meet, and you know. So anyway,
Well, you know, so hello to Matt Davis and Liz Barnett's joining from Michigan. And so we appreciate everybody joining. And I know some folks are going to want, oh, Kyle, your wife is joining us from Brazil.
And she is on a bus right now, en route from Sao Paulo, going to Itapoa, about a 10-hour drive. Hello, Liza. And so she is going to go take a little vacation down on the beaches of Itapoa. And so so her family lives down there, so she's going to go take a break. And so I'm glad she works around the clock like I do.
Well, yeah. Tell us how you got into movie making. I guess it was when you guys started editing those VHS tapes so that your mother would let you watch them.
Yes, and it was actually, now you think about it, first thing we did is when I got in a car wreck on my 13th birthday. I was in the back seat of a truck, and when you could sit in the back of a truck, and my grandpa's driving down the road, and Kenny's on that side, and this lady whose husband had just died just wasn't paying attention, drove right in front of us, and we hit them probably 50 miles an hour, hit my head, bounced out all the way. And anyway, in the hospital. Well, anyway, I ended up, because of insurance, getting almost went blind and almost died. But other than that, though, I ended up getting some insurance. So I wanted to buy a video camera. So we bought a VHS camera, and so we could finally shoot our own commercials. And so out of that tragic event came, and you know, the very first one we ever made was I hit record, and then I paused, and I was like, "Hey, Kenny, now move, you know, go away." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, and I made him disappear. And so that was the very first thing that we filmed that we were, and so when we watched it back, he's just like, boop. And then we were hooked, you know. So,
well, Kent Speakman just joined us from Los Angeles, and he said, "Connect." He said, "Connect TV, happy to be sharing this live with our TV viewers as well." Kent, thank you so much for adding In Your Corner to your lineup, and couldn't think of a better guest to hit it out of the park than Kyle, movie star, maker, Saylors. Well, you know,
we got to spend time with Kent he came on our cruise, take a bunch of our friends. We all go on a cruise every year to different countries. And so we had a great time hanging out with Kent and a lot of other friends, but we had, he reminded me of like a George Clooney kind of dude, you know.
I remember.
He's a cool dude, you know. He made me feel very unfashionable.
Hey, Doug Carter says much appreciation to Kyle for being a fountain inspiration. And Kyle, let me say hello to a couple more people. Then you can talk about how Dinners with Dreamers became so inspirational for so many people. Your wife says, hello, friends. Renee Jones says, hey, from Lebanon, Tennessee. Okay, Renee Jones Ailes. Wild Bill. Okay, so anyway, tell us kind of how this Dinner with Dreamers group started in the beginning.
A decade and some change ago, I was sitting there and I had an epiphany, I guess. I won't go into the backstory, but I was sitting there. I was like, what am I going to do? Da, da, da. And I just had this epiphany that was like, invite your friends over. And so I thought it was really not, it wasn't like it was supposed to be a party. It was supposed to be just like, I just thought like, it just randomly hit me like, who I meet doing film or television or documentaries. You just meet the most interesting people in the world, really, and it seems to draw that type of person to it. Some good, interesting, some bad, interesting, but nonetheless interesting. And we, so I thought, who's some of the most interesting people I know, and I put together. I called like somebody, and then I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Nashville's so busy." I was like, "What are you doing the weekend after Nashville? The weekend after New Year's?" And there's like nothing. And so the next guy's like, "Hey, so and so's coming. You want to come?" And then next one, and then one of those happened to be a country music singer, and he goes, "Hey, if those guys are going to be there, do you mind if I play some songs?" And then an hour later, one of his friends called and says, "Hey, if he's going to be there, Billy's going to be there. Can I play some songs?" And then it kind of morphed into a party. 2 weeks later, I had about 150 friends over, the most of which I haven't seen that much. Like it's hard to reconnect when you're busy all the time. And so we just had a great time. People that sang, and people that had these great, fantastic stories of who they worked with and the war stories. They talked in these rooms. So we just took over the whole house, and it turned into. And a few months later, I won't go into the whole thing, but I ran into all these people in a week that just was like, man, I met this person at your party. Now we're doing this and we're doing this. And I got this gig and I'm doing this. Like every day I would just meet somebody. And so somebody said, you need to have another party. So I did. And I was like, invite somebody cool, because if I know everybody. So they did. And it turned to 200 to 300 to 500. We do theme parties. And then it got too big that I didn't really know half the people. So then I was like, you know what? And I had a stack of business cards and I was like, this is impossible. I will never be able to go to coffee with. So I thought, what if I just picked like 25 people, and I just said, what if we just all went to dinner at one time? And that's what it was. I was like, there's a secret dinner. You don't know where it's at or who's going to be there, but you know why. Share, connect, change your world. Are you in or out? We all met. We did that. It was so much fun. No one there had ever met each other except I had met them all. And so we did that, and then we did it again, and it was random, pop up here, there. And then I would do it if I was in London. I'd say I put them in a Facebook group, private Facebook group. And then so in the course of a decade, I don't know, I haven't kept up with the exact number. It was somewhere in the neighborhood. I've had dinner with probably 10,000 people. And it collectively, a lot of them aren't in the group, but they bring their plus ones and this and that. And so we have fun. And then we started doing cruises together, and through that, people have gotten movies, record deals, books, publishing, this and that. They've met friends. People have gotten married. People have done this. People have got connected. One girl here, she came in from Ireland, and somebody she met at the very first Dinner Dreamers ended up helping her in her career. And some while later, she's on the Grand Ole Opry opening for Garth Brooks. And so Claire Cunningham. And so there's this mass collection of people who are not here for ego or like, oh, I know. And it's assortment. Some people are at the top of the game, and some people are just somebody I met at a coffee house. Like, you're a cool person. Do you want to come? And they have a creative dream in life and they don't know what to do. And so it's a collective of people. And I figure if you're up here, you need to be helping the next guy the best you can.
Yeah, and I can give you my testimony about that too. I met you when you first came to Nashville about 15 years ago, and you were on set helping somebody else film. And Deb Maffitt called me, former Miss America, that was part of that production that day, and said, "Hey, Carrie, we're filming over here." I think it was with Robin Bertram. Said, "We've got an hour left. Why don't you come over and let's film a pilot?" So I came over and you filmed my very first television program, In Your Corner, and that was 15, 16 years ago. And since that time, we did over 500 of those on Daystar and the NRB TV network. And then getting hooked up with you and Kenny at Dinner with Dreamers and all, I've ended up doing, I think, 5 documentaries and number 5 is the one you're talking about that's not finished yet. But you guys have helped me with all of them. So it's been, and we've met a lot of. Oh, let me tell you one more that you'll forget. You were having a meeting in October of 21 at the farm right there where you're sitting now, and it was a cool night and kind of cold. And I'm 20 minutes from the farm, and my wife had died just a few months before that. And so I walked out to my car and drove over to the farm where you were at. And I was standing in the barn out there, just the other side of where you're at. And this guy, Raymond Austin, comes up to me and says, "Hey, Kerry, what can I pray with you about?" And I said, "Well, a woman I could do ministry with." So he introduces me to his Aunt Latrell and, said, "Hey, she just lost her husband. She lives in Texas," and said, "Would you like to meet her?" And I thought, well, that's never going to happen. I thought, well, the next time she comes to town, we'll all go to dinner. So it wasn't 5 or 6 weeks later. She came to town, and Raymond and her sister and Patsy and all of us went to dinner. And about a year later, that lady and I got married, and that's my wife, Latrell. So that all happened because of the Dreamers. So it's been a blessing for me, certainly.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, like Raymond, this is how I believe, I think people don't really, if you think about in your life, like a specific moment or a specific thing that happened, like, oh, wow. And you start to backtrack it. Very few people don't backtrack the connections the crazy moments in time that if all these hadn't connected, it would have changed the history for some person. And so, for instance, Raymond, I knew him from like in the 1980s or whatever it was. Like our dads both pastored the same church at different times. And then we ended up seeing each other in college, and then a few random times. And one time it seems to me that I was doing the log cabin party, and it's just for the people in the group. But I think what I did is I posted it on my main Facebook page and just said, "Hey, I'm having this party. If you want to come, but you're not in my Dreamer group, but you're my friend, just let me know." And he was just like, and he was like, "Wow, that's cool," or something. And so I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, why don't you come?" And he was like, "What?" And he came, and for good or bad, it changed his life too. He got hooked in. Now he does. Actually, he hosts right now live. He's doing a jam session with all these musicians museum every Wednesday. And so each person, I think, and there's thousands of these little tiny micro divine connections, I think, that happens when you don't have expectations and you make friends without agenda and you just let life flow, like an ocean,
Yeah. Well, Kyle, there are a lot of people on tonight. I mean, a lot of people in fact, let's see, one of our friends that was on a cruise joined us from, Dave Trotman, I think, joined us from Canada. And
yeah.
So, I mean, people from all over the country, all over the world. I think people would really like to know from you how they can get started doing maybe video production. Maybe they're just doing it for social media or whatever, or how they can, share a story of their life on video, or how they can produce documentaries or films. Kind of give us a little idea of how somebody could, do something for themselves, or if they even wanted to take it bigger, what they would have to do.
So when we started, there was no in between. You either had like a VHS camera, or you had like a $50,000 Ikegami or a $250,000 film camera, right? So there was no in between ground. And so that, I think, is the biggest dynamic that's changed. And I'll even go into some of the AI here in a minute too, of how that's, but I believe that number one, it does two things. Number one is it creates a greater opportunity. Like there's an easier way now, no matter what you do or don't know, you can go to YouTube and some 12-year-old is going to be an expert and tell you what you need to do, what program. And now, because of competition, like, the same program, you can buy the studio version for a few $100s, but the same editing program that they use on Avengers, you can use at home for free. And so it's a different game and a different day. And it used to be, Lucas, he would spend $100,000 for one editing machine, and so now there's no excuses, but it's just dependent on, now there's millions and hundreds of millions of creators all over the world. So it's got to be, what do I, if I want to be a creator, what am I going to do that's going to be I believe, a niche that will be easily identified, easily finding, because you're not going to compete with Avengers or this or that or whatever the biggest flavor of the week is, or Netflix special of the week, or Adam Sandler movie. So you have to find what is it that is passionate for you, that you could do long term, that you would do even if you never got paid for it, you would do. And so that's the thing that I believe. Like, if you find that it's something you're so passionate about that you would do for the rest of your life for nothing because you love it so much, then that is the first rule. If you do something you don't, ooh, this will be cool so I can make some money on the side, just give up.
So you're saying you got to have passion.
Yeah.
You got to be passionate about it. And folks, if there's anybody out there that has a question for Kyle, we've got him cornered right now. I mean, he can't drive that car anywhere. So if you have a question, drop a comment and we'll pose it to Kyle here. So Kyle, what are you and Kenny? Of course, you're the Saylors Brothers Entertainment group. What are you guys up to primarily right now?
Man. Oh, we do have we got April. We have a premiere that's with Angel Studios, a new film with Christian McCartney, who he's a first time he's been in a movie. He's an influencer. He's got about 8 million followers, and this is his first acting role. And we met him on our Dreamers cruise. This is how the wheels of connection work, I believe. And he was invited by Tom, and then we made friends. And I said, "What's your dream?" Like he already is in some ways living his dream. He's made his life being a comedian, and and he said, "Man, I really want to be an actor, but taken seriously, and not just stuff I do on my cell phone." Fast forward a few months later, the Cook brothers, who we had kind of inspired and helped and gave some advice and always picked up their call, I guess, and encouraged them to keep on pursuing their dream. They had put together their first movie, and they asked if we would come on and be executive producers and really help them lead through the whole process and help them all the way through. And so we knew that they were talented enough, and they'd always listened to our advice. And so we did, and it's a very, very beautiful movie. It's about opioid addiction, but it's a redemption story, and it's going to come out in the 1st of May. And but the goal was that they really had this artistic vision to look like, I don't know if you watch like which studio films or whatever, but like the A24s, they do a lot of the high-end independent. So they wanted this very unique artistic vision, and they were a stickler on amazing, amazing actors. And we're just like, you gotta have the amazing acting, amazing cinematography, amazing sound. And so every single ounce of the film it's a beautiful, beautiful film. And we just got the color back, and the guys who actually, the company that did Superman, colored the film. And so it's beautiful. So I'm really excited for people to see that. It's one of the many moon things that we do. So.
Yeah, and you do. DeLacy Belafonte says, Kyle, what's your favorite project you've ever done?
I don't really think there is one. I think everything has. Now, we'd love to travel, and so we've spent time in, I don't know, 60 probably something countries. I lost count somewhere along the way, but I love when we can go tell stories of other cultures. We got to spend 3 months in India on Tears. It was a documentary about the plight of women in India, and to me, it was like real life Indiana Jones, like camels and trains and this and the mountains, and through places they didn't even have technology, or they didn't have phones, or they didn't have. So it was just like that's our motto is, number one, great people. When we were in LA, when we first got there, we did films and we did projects just to do them, to say, okay, we need to build our credits, let's do it. But they weren't good people. And when you do stuff with bad people, you're going to get a bad result. And then, and ultimately what changed our life is when we said they have to be great people, great stories, great causes, or great adventures. And if it can be all four of those, it's going to be a home run. If it can be, 3, But great people is the one that is a non-negotiable. If you don't have a project and you don't have great people involved, you're just wasting. You're gonna rue the
Yeah,
day.
so true. And Rob Blair says that he loves the Hollywood on Fire story, Kyle.
Oh yeah, that was one long, long, long time ago. It was a little documentary, and we were like, and we had gone through this horrible experience with a unnamed movie director, and who thought he literally in the middle of the set said, "I am God," and it's a true story. But we were like, this was that decision to be like what I told you earlier. This is not the dream, and so it was. I woke up in the middle of the night and I came up with this idea for this poster, and I went and made it, which ended up being the final poster. But it was called Hollywood on Fire, and I was like, are there any people of faith or something in this town of Hollywood? And so for the next year, and we thought, well, doing this could completely collapse our career, but we didn't care. We were just like, whatever. At this point, I don't want to deal with people like that guy. And so anyway, we went around for the next year, just interviewing on the side people, and Kevin did that with us, and we met for the first time all these great people, many of whom I'm still friends with to this day, and we realized there's tons of people of faith in Hollywood, and so ended up signing what was a bad distribution deal that never went anywhere, never saw a penny from that thing. It went off into oblivion, and a couple of things came out, and so it was like. And I was like, why did we do that? It's one of those things in life when you're like, I really thought like I was supposed to do that. And that was like the most waste of time I ever did, because on a base level of what success is, it was like it didn't make a penny. I mean, not one penny. It just took us a year of our life almost, I mean, we did other things, but and so anyway, two stories, one of which was on the Dreamer cruise, but that I saw. But I ran into this dude, and this young kid looking dude runs up to me, and he's like, we were at a mixer at a convention or something, and I had a little name badge on, and he goes, "You're Kyle Saylors," and I was like, and at that point, it's not like we'd just done a few documentaries, so it's not like we had really done that much anyway. But he came up and he goes, "Man," he goes, "I just want to say thank you." He goes, he said, he goes, "I was having a dilemma. Was like, there's all this stuff, and I came from a family that was that didn't want me to watch movies and do, or go into movies, wanted me to go into the business and da da da." And he said, "I had to come to a crux. Is this what I'm going to do?" And he said, somewhere, somehow on the internet, I think it used to be on Netflix when it was a DVD. And he said he found that documentary, and he goes, "I watched it, and it made my decision, and I made everybody on our crew watch that documentary." And he goes, "Fast forward, I've made 6 movies. Now he's made 13, and all of them have been profitable except one. So maybe that's almost a record, And but so then one more story out of that, and it's even cooler. I was in. So I moved to Nashville, and they asked me to be a part of this Chamber of Commerce to speak. And they said, "Hey, will you tell us some about this documentary?" And because we had a few notable people in the documentary, and so and so I said, "Sure," And I was like, at that point, I still didn't. I mean, I was a friendly guy, but I didn't know anybody in Nashville. And I got there, and I was like, "Where's this at?" And they're like, "Oh, it's at this place." And I was like, "People are going to buy lunch." And I said, "Well, how much is it?" $20. I was like, "Well, man, ain't nobody gonna come listen to me for $20. And, 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 and so the place was packed. It was like 200 people there. And so, and it was a great time. So I thought, you know what? I got a stack of DVDs. I had many, many boxes of them in my garage. And I was like, this is a chance I can actually make a few bucks, at least on this thing. So I went over there. I was like, "Hey, I'm going to sell DVDs." So I went over there, and we sold some DVDs, and I would sign them, And so anyway, these people, they stood in line, and at the end of the line, this lady walks up, and she said, now in my mind, this was still an utter dismal failure of a project. So it wasn't like something I was trying to overly promote. And now looking back at it, but she said, "Hey, you last person in line." She walks up, she hands me her card. Something it was just some random business card, and she said, "I don't know who you are, and you don't know who I am, but I looked up your name on the internet, and it said you were speaking here, so I flew here." And now at this point, my mind is thinking like, "Uh-oh, is this like a star? Is she gonna kill me?" You know, like, I'm thinking, "Is this a stalker?" And then she said, and then she goes, she said, "I my best friend 2 weeks ago died, and before she died, she said for me to come find the Sailors brothers and tell them thank you for making Hollywood on fire." And she said my friend was Farrah Fawcett,
Wow. That
and
I've heard
so
that story before, but it's amazing.
yeah, and so it really showed me is like if you have a story to tell, do not worry about, and you say this is something I'm supposed to do, that even if it's a dismal failure, and even if it didn't make you one penny, and even if you don't know if even anybody saw it on this planet, that if it affected someone enough that they would tell somebody to go thank you. And I was like, it shows that our version of success is not what the overall industry or the world or everything's version of success. And so we don't need to put our value and our version of success under the same lenses as they do everything else, because we're not playing the same game.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a question here from Mrs. Kyle Saylors. She says, throughout your career and work related travels, is there a story that particularly stands out to you?
Let's see here. In my work-related travels, uh, hmm, I don't know if this is a trick question. If it should be one that, yeah, I'm like, is there one I'm
Well,
supposed to
let me
think
tell
of?
you how somebody answered it. Let me see if I can find it. DeLacy said when he met you.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of a crazy story though, because we we were a part of His Only Son, the movie. We went to the very 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 fast version is I was in Amsterdam airport. I went on Instagram. I one of my friends was Jared was in the airport. He's like, I'm in the Amsterdam airport. I was like, hey fool, I am too. And then found out we were both going to Cannes. So we did a dinner of dreamers at Cannes, like I was telling you, pop up, and we had a great time. And then a week later, now I had met Liza a month before that, and no, 3 months, sorry, 3 months before that. And so I had planned to go to Brazil. Now I didn't tell anybody I was going to Brazil. I didn't tell, because I was like, I don't know. She likes me on the phone, but this might, go. So I was just like, but I travel everywhere, so nobody really questions why I end up in all these random countries. And so anyway, so I was there. Well, then the week that I was planning to go, I saw online that Jared, who was with Angel Studios, who ended up distributing that film, uh, he's he said, "I'm going to Brazil, and we're going to Brazil. We have a Portuguese premiere of The Chosen." And so I said, "Hey, fool, I'm going to be in Brazil." And and he goes, "Where are you going to be?" "Sao Paulo." He goes, "That's where we'll be." So it just happens to be that her, who she helped, how she became my friend was 7, 8 years before that. We on Facebook, because she started working part time for a company that markets faith films into Brazil, and so her boss told her to network with Americans, and so me and Kenny, and a bunch of my friends, and that was it. We were Facebook friends for 7 years before we ever actually talked. But so it just happened to be that is the company that handled the premiere for them. It was in Brazil. She was working that particular event anyway. We go down there, and whenever we got there, and we were standing there, and that was the first time I met all the guys, and they were like, "I think God's trying to tell us we need to put this." And so they did for Easter, and it went from 500 screens to 22,000 or 2,000, and and it became the number 3 box office when it came out. Little bitty independent film, and And so, but all that was tied to these moments in life, and this is how I live. I don't know how the rest of the world live because I've lived my way so long, but the way that I live is like when you see those little connections that here and there and these moments and him and the story behind that film and the story behind this and my story backstory and her backstory and all these moments when they all meet together, there's something beautiful in those moments. And there's usually a lot of stuff that happens in time and this and that and questions until you get there. But when you see those line up, then you're like, okay, this is not accident, you know? So.
Yeah, and let me say this before I ask you another question. We look forward to the day when you can get your wife Liza here from Brazil. You guys have been married for, is it 2 years yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet you're still having to go back and forth. She hasn't been able to get into the country, so we'll keep praying for that. But Kyle, you and Kenny, your PKs, your preacher kids, and you grew up in a very, I wouldn't say legalistic, but your mom was real careful in what she let you watch. And, so both of you are believers. You're Christian, but you wouldn't necessarily say that you're Christian filmmakers. So how do you separate, that, because you guys were Christian men, come out of a very conservative background out of Greenville, Texas, and you go to Hollywood, California, and how did you, live in that environment as Christians?
To me, I don't know. Maybe it was because I was shy for all those years that it never really made a difference what people thought about me. Like it never did. Uh, Thank you, Liza. I see her comment, but and that was the best story. But it was never really. It never bothered me. I never cared what people thought about me. So to me it didn't matter. And in my view of when you travel the world a lot and you go to other third world countries and you go to whether it's India and or the Middle East or Asia or China or wherever you end up, and I've ended up in all corners of the earth, is the vast majority of humankind in the history of the world have believed there's something greater out there. And so it is not, they try to make it like, oh, there's just a few dumb people that think this way. No, the vast majority of every human that has ever lived in all of humanity have had a recognition that there is something greater out there. And I think when you realize this is not and then there's small groups of people who begin to ostracize that and they begin to think like, oh no, you're dumb if you think that. And, but all I believe is if you are genuine and you're authentic, and I think the problem with, especially in America, is we grew up in a culture where these mega pastors began to use megaphones to raise mega capital, and it became more about the bigger, flashier, grander, whatever, than it did about the simple message of loving your neighbor. And I think that's what threw. I think that's part of what threw the whole, the whole paradigm off, that we have such a bad reputation. I started out in Christian TV, and so I know some of the stories, but it never affected me in my faith. And I don't know. I'm just maybe I'm not a normal person, but it didn't matter who I was around. It didn't matter. I mean, we would go to meetings and they'd pull cocaine out on the table in the middle of a restaurant, and it never was like, oh wow, I really want that. It's like, that's dumb. And that's probably because my mom, the way I was raised, and I never cared. Like, it doesn't matter. I could be around it 24 hours a day. I could be around people that do anything. I mean, dang, we went to Satan Con,
I thought we were nuts for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, it doesn't bother me because in my anticipation is that no one's going to think like me. And we live in the society now that if somebody doesn't think exactly like me, I got to push them out of my life. That's the dumbest philosophy that has ever existed in the world, because obviously no two people on earth are going to think identically. And so the more you you have to be extremely narrow-minded to put yourself into that kind of box, that I will only associate with people who have the exact ideological. And I think our goal is to be an inspiration. Our goal is to be an influence. Our goal is that I'm a light and I'm a seed planter. And so whatever I see, if I see greatness in somebody, I tell them right there. I don't care who they are or where they're at. If it's on an airplane or it's somebody, I'll meet random people and I'll be like, I see greatness in this person, and I'll go tell them. And maybe no one in their life has ever told them that. And so to me, I don't know, maybe it probably cost us years of our life or lost opportunities or whatever, but it never really, we would do a project that had a lot of, like Volunteers, that's something very blatantly like this was for an organization that went and has churches in India. And then we'd go off and do Red Bull show, and it never affected, and nor did anybody care. So my perspective is not, I think we're told that there's this, I think where social media has amplified the megaphone of a few. And when I really realized there's just people trying to survive, they're just people trying to live their dream, and maybe their dream is off or messed up or whatever it is. But my version is judge not lest you be judged. I don't really want to be judged, so I don't really judge people that much. I just I try to, I want to, I want to have an easy trial at the end of my days.
Yeah. Donna Lynn Davis says, Kyle, do you prefer producing films based on true stories, or do you entertain a strong fiction film with a good message?
I love all movies, and I don't have a specific preference, but I think maybe because we did so many documentaries in our life that there is something about true stories that is drawn to the authenticity of the story. So I think when and I believe good writers will take the true stories from their own life and they'll incorporate them into fictional characters. So I think there's a little bit of true stories in all stories, like I love that Project Hail Mary. I just watched that and I was like, that's one of the, I'm not even like a huge geeked out sci-fi fan or anything, but I was just like, that's one of the better movies in maybe 40 years. Like just,
what was it?
And it's a fictional story, but there's truth within that story. So I like both. In general, right now, the ones that we're developing, the ones that we're attached to, the majority of them are true stories that tell stories of cultures that maybe are missed or don't have someone telling their story.
Well, why don't you tell us how you're doing with the Elvis film In the Shadow of the King that you've been working on for several years?
It kind of started again it was a side project. We came across through Brian. He bought Colonel Parker's house, in which, ironically, I'm sitting in part of Colonel Parker's and Elvis's chair right now. This is the
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's Elvis's closet from his apartment. So and Colonel Parker. So anyway, he had bought this. I mean, I don't know. This is probably 8 years ago or something. And well, he has a museum, so down the road, and so he interviewed people because he likes telling stories and he likes capturing. So it was really probably just for a museum video. It wasn't really anything about it. One night came up in conversation, and we were just, I don't even know, some distributor. And I was just like, it dawned on us. I was like, hey, do you have the raw interviews of those interviews you recorded through the years? And he's like, yes, they were on a hard drive. And because it was just, he made a little 5-minute piece or whatever it was. And I was like, they were really fascinating, but it was just like, boop, 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 almost like a trailer. And we started watching, and me and Kenny sit down and just in the background played interviews. And through the night, we watched, I don't know, 10 hours of interviews. Some of the greatest stories about Elvis that I've ever heard, the stories that have never really been told. It's not about his stardom. It's about him as a human being and his struggles in life and his struggles with faith and his struggles with. And so we just like, this has to be a film. And it was one of those we started, and we should have went out, maybe, and, raised money and this, but it was not one of those. It was one of those, we just got to do it. And so we just, over time, just paid for it out of our pocket over time. And it's finally to the finish line. But I'm glad. I often wondered, because we travel a lot, so it's not like we were working on it every day. But I often wondered, like, why does this take so long? I want to jump off a cliff sometime trying to finish this thing. And we've had so many versions, and then we'll find out more, or we get something, or one piece of footage, or this or that. And so, But then when I watched Boz Luhrmann film that they spent 10 million and they spent 5 years, so they spent longer than us. Uh, I was like, it's a very beautiful film, by the way, the epic. But I'm glad I saw it because there was a little bit of overlap. I didn't want us to look like the Temu version of Boz Luhrmann, but it was it was a complementary. It set up the cue to, in general, the mass population about Elvis. It's set up in a perfect cue of the story we're about to tell, and I don't think there could have been. And so now I realize the timing was perfect, and because of technology and because of some stuff, we're putting in more things into it now. One last pass. This is the last one. I'm working on it tonight, all night long,
All
and
night long.
all night long. I've had so many of those, but now I finally feel like we're this is the one it was supposed to be, and it took a long time to get there, and so not ever most projects we go in, we have a budget, and then we just go boom at it here, and but this is one that was
Oh yeah.
over a long period of time, but for some reason I feel like it's right on time.
I'm sure I've seen at least 10 versions of it, from when you first started, and you keep editing, keep redoing it. And that's, I didn't realize that's the way it goes, but I mean, you've been editing that thing for a couple of years.
It was yeah, it was just not one of those I mean, we had hard drives die, we had this and that and this, just crazy, crazy things that should never happen in life. And and it was just, and then but we found some gems that if we would have just finished it like we originally thought, just out, there was some pieces that changed the history of Elvis that would have been lost, and it was not the same without him. And so we realized, even to this last deal, I just found something else, and I was like, oh man, that has to go in there. I was like, not again, but and we consulted with somebody too on the legal. There's a lot of legalities on when you're using that kind of source of footage over time, and but now it's visually very different than what you just last saw. Very, very different, and it's finally the film that it's supposed to be. So.
Oh, that's just great. Hey, I was involved with you guys when we started Exorcism in America. Tell people what that film is about, and what's your progress on that one.
It kind of started out of this odd cultural fascination with evil, I guess, that we see in America today, that they're on the front of on the Grammys or on here or there or whatever in music, and and it just becomes more prevalent, and in movies and this, and so it was really it's a deep dive into the past, the present, and the future of what and why. And of course, if anybody has actually looked into the Epstein files, which I'm not going to go re-edit a whole version for that, but but that'd take too long. But if you've looked in the Epstein files extensively, I mean, there's millions of files, but a lot of the roots of what we're talking about, you trace back to where they're coming from, and so it's a deep, wide. It's not just like some pop culture thing, but that's where we start. We started the reference of The Exorcism, the movie, which was a cultural shift in America. And we start with and we have a few things in there people don't know about. And from the creators to this and the backstory and why and the cultural. And so I like telling stories about things that people don't think, they think about. They watch movies all the time, but they don't think about why or whatever, and so I don't know. But I feel like it's something we're supposed to do, like, I don't know if I'm supposed to do something, I just do it. I don't really ask questions.
You just go. But I remember when you first started filming that, and we filmed at an actual meeting where there were exorcisms done, and it was the wildest and craziest thing I'd ever seen. I think one of the cameramen said, excuse my French, but he said, that scared the hell out of me.
Yeah,
So that's what we want, right? We wanted to scare people enough so that they turn away from the devil and turn towards the Lord.
Well, to me, I think it's like, you look at this in the world, I think it's some people have this deniability, plausible deniability that there's evil in the world. But I don't know how anybody could look at anywhere in the world and say there's not evil. Like so, but a recognition of evil is also a recognition of God, and so you can't have one without the other. Because if it was pure evil, this world would already been done a long time ago. We would none of us be here. And if it was, and we even went to the atheists, we were like, what do you think? Like, so we're like, and I didn't want the dumb ones. There's plenty of dumb on every side of every equation. So I always hate when they do documentaries and they find somebody and they just go find the craziest person they can find and they try to label that to a whole. I was like, I want the smartest person you got. Like who's your best? Like give me your best answer, and I want to just compare it side by side with you and you. And so I'm just like, it's I don't know. Maybe no network on earth is scared of this thing. I don't know, but or maybe it'll blow up and be the biggest. I don't know. I was just supposed to do it. So
I hope it does.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob Blair says, how do you know if a movie can be successful? What are key components that are needed in the story?
I believe it's the component. Well, number one, it is the script. If the script is not great, there is no amount of money on earth. There's no camera in the world. There's no AI. There's nothing that can ever make that into a good movie. It doesn't matter. The greatest actors that have ever lived, it has to be the story. And so I think if people realize that your story is the most important thing, and we've all walked out of a $200 million movie and was like, boy, that was a waste of my life. And like, what was this garbage? Because it was about the effect. It was about the spectacle. It was about whatever else, but it wasn't about the story. And in the end, I think a story, it's kind of a visceral thing, but it has to be, you have to care. Like you have to care about the character. And if you don't care about that main character, you're not going to like the story. So I think one of its likable characters, and also the hero's journey, I think is, in me, if I look at the movies that changed my life was like Rocky, like now it didn't make me want to go be a boxer, but it made me want to put everything into changing my life. It made me like, I always felt like I'm the underdog. I still feel like that I'm the underdog. And I think that I like being the underdog now because people's expectations, they don't really see you coming. And then you can do stuff that's out of the box because you're the underdog. Who cares? They don't care, So being the underdog is a good thing,
Yeah. Hey, Vicki Lynn has joined us, and
Hey, Vicky.
she's a fabulous country singer. Her dad ran a studio down on Music Row for years and hired this young man named Pat Holt. Pat Holt's one of the top producers in Nashville today and is married to Erlene Mandrell. He also produces Vicki Lynn because she's known him forever. But she says, and she has an amazing story, and she says, what is the other option if you have a true story and the characters in the movie do not want to be mentioned? Should it become fictional if you do not have their permission, or how do you get around it to get the message out in all its truth?
Well, as you'll see at the end credits, usually the very, very, very last thing, it will say, or sometimes on documentaries, the names of the characters have been changed to protect the innocent, or whatever it is, And so you could take. I mean, it's a story. I think when people watch a movie, when you're flipping through Netflix, you're not going to make a snap judgment on, like, oh, I'm only going to watch this if these are true characters, or And so there is a true story, which means it is very verbatim. It's a true story. There's based on a true story, which is, you read an article and there's a story and you kind of took that as your basis, but you maybe didn't delve quite as deep. And then there's inspired by a true story, which is, hey, this person jumped off the Grand Canyon and swam the river, and you inspired by that. You may have nothing to do with the original story, but it inspired you to write your story. And so, that's hopefully that helps. I don't know, but yeah, you can fictionalize, and we're doing, even in the true stories that we're doing, we'll put in fictional characters because there's no way. Sometimes if there's 57 main characters, you can't, in real life, there's a lot of people that intersect with these stories. And so sometimes we'll take three guys that characters and combine them into one because in a story you need to structurally you just can't introduce enough people. So you can combine characters, give them a new name, and then that way you're not specifically targeting that person, so to speak, so they don't sue you.
Well, Kyle, I want to ask you one more question. If nobody else does, we're bumping right up at an hour now. I don't want to take you all night. I want to let you do some editing, but I want to ask you, and then if nobody else asks a question, we'll let you go here. But tell us a little bit about this dynamic between you and Kenny. Kenny, I know, is a great screenwriter, does a lot of the writing. You do the grunt work. You do most of the editing, and then you both handle the business side together. Give us kind of an idea of how that works for you two.
So we both have been producers. We've both been directors. We've both been kind of the full gamut of the spectrum. Kenny, I believe, or this is just the way it's kind of become, especially when we're dealing with movies. Kenny's a lot better on the front side of the development and putting together the logistics, the scheduling, the budgets, the story. He's much better writer than I. Thank you. And he's much better. He's very great at crafting a story, and so he starts up to there, and then a lot of times I'll be finishing a film or project on the tail end while he's starting the next one, and then when it starts into production, we just both boom, and then I'll take that one after production. We're both there, and then I'll take it to the finish line here, and then he'll start on the next one. So while I'm finishing, and obviously, like the Cook Brothers film, they had a whole separate team. So like the guys that did Superman did our color. So I'm not sitting there worrying about the color. We got the best in the world doing it. So
and you got
a lot of
guys
times
you bring in too, right? You got sound guys.
yeah. I mean, it takes a village, I mean, it's, it depends on the budget, but anywhere from 50 to 150 crew on, like a film, and so, but the logistical side, I'm definitely getting more scatterbrained in my years. So I'm more creative, and my head is like, I'm the big picture, throwing this and this. Kenny's more pragmatic. Okay, how do we get this executed? How do we pull it? And so we have different strengths and weaknesses, but we'll if we have an idea and I'll be like, oh yeah, this is a great idea, and he'll be like, oh, that idea sucks, and we'll just sit there until we can both say boom, boom, boom. Oh wait, there we go. So we chip on it, not in a mean way, but we're not offended. Like, okay, well, it's a good granule of an idea, or it's a good title, or maybe, and then after we agree, then we'll pass it to a few other trusted people, and if they all agree, then we'll be like, all right, that's it, that's what it is. And if it's not, if there's always, you can ask 1,000 people and they'll give you 1,000 opinions. So I don't go that, I don't have too wide of a loop on that. But if it's a consistency, like, oh, this is too long, or this is too that, or that's not a good title, or this, then we both, I think, are bendable to say we just want whatever's the best, and.
Well, Rob Blair says you and Kenny are the perfect odd couple. Two brothers there. Kyle, you've inspired so many people, especially with the Dinner of Dreamers, and you've connected so many people, and you've encouraged so many people. And so what we want to do is we kind of want to follow your lead here at In Your Corner. I thought, we interviewed Patsy Austin yesterday, Raymond's wife, that's been your friend forever. And we just thought that we would start trying to encourage people that are dreamers. So over the next few months, we're going to just interview all of the dreamers that have a story that they want to tell, and we'll try and help get their story out there. So don't everybody call me at one time, but we'll start doing interviews with everybody that. In fact, John Mark Grob is going to, that great cartoonist, is going to be with me next Wednesday. Yeah, he's a good guy. Is there anything else you would like to say, or anything that I haven't asked you that our audience would like to know about you?
Not about me. I think it's about like Dinner with Dreamers. I don't really do that for me. I do it because I love people, and I think we live we live in an ironically, and social media has created an antisocial earth, and there's people that don't know how to communicate on a base level unless they're hidden behind a phone. And so, Dinner with Dreamers was not about a Facebook page or a whatever. It is a get out of this dang box that we're in, not here, and go in the real world and meet people of like mind, and meet 20 or 50 or 100 of them. And out of that culling of relationships, you ain't gonna make friends with all of them, but you're gonna find one. Then when you share your vision, you don't have to be pitching people. You just say, this is what I want to do in life. And when you have that magical moment that somebody else goes, this is what I want to do. And they're like, well, I have this. And they're like, well, but I need this. And they're like, well, I have this. Then you both help each other. And I think when we stop trying to just focus, and I will say some of our biggest successes, from Sundance to the box office things, to some of them, have all been other people's visions that we came along and believed in. And we, oh, Rob, and that we came along and believed in someone else's vision. And so sometimes we take a back seat to the Cook brothers, who I believe are infinitely talented guys, and we believed in them. And I'll be honest, most of the other people in the industry couldn't care less because they're so focused on themselves. But I saw greatness and I saw talent, and so this film showcases that.
Yeah.
And I think believe in other people, and the greatest moments in life will sometimes be facilitating someone else's dreams, and that'll help your dreams come true.
Hey, let me ask you one more. Rob says we need to bring you back for more stories. Rob hung out with you for a couple of years in the log cabin. You think you'd know enough by now, right?
Rob has been one of my dearest friends, and met him there with you. I mean, same day. And that was a long time ago. That's crazy. And
yeah, he's helped me for 15 years, and you about the same length of time.
Yeah, and he just does it relentlessly. Even when I beat him up and throw him out the back, no, he is a selfless person that, like, I've never asked him to do anything with this. Well, sometimes I'll be like, hey, Rob, get that red carpet over here. But like, I never asked him to become really as integral, like in Dinner with Dreamers. He would just show up and bring a camera and, like, I'm going to record it, or I'm going to do this, or hey, I'm going to do that
100 times, right? He's done that 100 times.
Yeah, he's the only person that's gone to as many as me, maybe, but it's funny because when you hang around people, I just saw a picture of him from like a decade ago, and most people look worse as they get older. But I was like, if like you knew Rob back then and you know him now, he's like a very different person. Like you can see his confidence has gone from here to here. Even as Santa Claus, he's like
looking a lot more like Santa Claus.
and you can see his, because and when you hang around people who lift you up and you lift them up, all tides rise, and everybody becomes better people, and everybody rises to the occasion, and they become the best version of themselves, I think.
Yeah. And Rob says, love you both. And as men, Christian men, we have no problem telling our Christian brothers and sisters that we love one another. And Rob, we love you too. Cal, I wanted to ask you one last question. Tell us a little bit about Angel Studios and the kind of stuff they do. And then I'll let you go unless somebody else asks you an urgent question.
Well, to me, they've done something that what they're trying to do is take what was a very limited niche and turn it into the ability to make safe or value-driven content, redemptive value, I guess you'd say. Just not in any. In fact, I don't even think they want preachy stuff. They just want stuff that you can watch and not worry about something insane going on your TV, or them taking all their clothes off, or whatever, like with your kids in the room, whatever, like every other show now. And so by doing so, they've exploded, and they've gone through a lot of battles themselves, but they've exploded into. I think they have 100 million people now that have the app, that have downloaded, that have interacted with them at some fracture, and so to me, all tides rise. We've had one, two, three. This will be our third project that'll be released through them, but we don't. We we've got some stuff in development with, whatever big major studios. We've got this. I'm just glad to see that they have risen the bar and they're getting out of the box, like Solo Mio. I thought it was a great movie, Kevin James. And I think I think they're cracking the box and they're doing something innovative. And when you do something innovative, more people start to come to that.
Yeah, and the reason I ask you is because I know that you have been involved with them on numerous projects. Jonna Sussman, who's a lady that usually lives in the Eastern time zone and needs to go to bed early, said, "Fascinating interview. Thanks for sharing. Good night and God bless. Looking forward to seeing that Elvis project." So, with that, Kyle, I think that's a good night ending for you and I both. I want to thank you so very much for your kindness and sitting down and talking with us tonight. And Rob, will certainly ask our friend Kyle back just as soon as we can. Kyle, thank you so much. May the Lord continue to bless you, and we'll keep praying for you and Liza so that she can end up here before long.
Thank you, Kerry. You're awesome.